This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Everybody, and welcome back. I have Kamilla here today, who is a certified leadership coach and a speaker with over 12 years of experience in global corporations. Kamilla founded You Dream, You Do coaching to empower individuals and organizations to harness their resources for success. She believes in unlocking our untapped potential, love that, because everybody's got an untapped potential, and guiding us from self-doubt to self-actualization. Can't wait to talk more about that, Kamilla. Join us as Kamilla shares insights on embracing authenticity and achieving your dreams. Welcome to the show, Kamilla.
So awesome to be here. Thanks, Sacha, for hosting me.
So let's dive in a little and understand where you found the gap in the market to support the endeavors that you put forward for folks, maybe just someone like me or anybody that is in need of something like this.
Yeah, I think it comes really from personal experience. Honestly, when I started this whole journey, I wasn't thinking about the market, about any gap. I was really thinking about what do I need as a corporate professional, somebody who's been kind of going at a grind, doing my thing, climbing the corporate ladder, being successful, and feeling that something is not there, something is missing. And that's really where it started. It started with like understanding, who am I? What do I actually want? Why is there this constantly nagging feeling that something is missing? That like feeling of not enoughness, feeling of, like that, like tap into your, like in your head, like, just like maybe a little bit more and you'll be there. Maybe you look at it a little different way. Maybe the grass is greener on that side. Like that is what was happening to me for a long time. And I just couldn't figure it out. So that's where it started. And when I went into self-discovery, and when I was able to actually also apply parts of what I was learning with my mentees in corporate, and see their progress and see their results, that's when I realized that this is what we need. This is what professionals need. And people are hungry now for more, to show themselves more authentically, for more authentic leadership. It's all around us. However, there's like still old mindset kind of overarching it all, right? So it's really about separating and standing out as an individual and going from there.
No, I love that. I love hearing when people start something because it came from a place within you that you felt was missing to kind of grow from there. And then you put the test to the market to really figure out, how is this going to work? And then you got your answers almost immediately. And it is true. I think that, and maybe this isn't a question for you, but more than ever now, or maybe even post COVID, there has been this push for that authenticity. I think communication has been on a different path, specifically also with corporations and how they move forward. And specifically also with leadership, because you did talk about how, there still is this old guard, and maybe it stems from an older generation of how they think business should be run. But talk to us a little bit about that in terms of, a little bit about the atmosphere in terms of how you've seen it shift and change, and how what you do is really, pushing that forward.
Yeah, I think that during COVID, people really connected with their whole, with their life outside of work. Before COVID, everything that we did, everything we talked about, what do you do, right? That's the first question we ask people. What do you do? So we don't ask, tell me about your life. We ask, what do you do as a professional? So, and that is really what defined people before COVID. And then when COVID happened, every kid that was born, parents actually saw them growing up during COVID, right? So at least like what, for a year, 2 years, the pets, like people had new pets. So life started happening and people started connecting with things that they actually enjoy doing outside of work. And the thing about it is that productivity at work has actually not decreased. So people were able to give themselves to their places of employment, but also enjoy their life. And in finding that joy, people started recognizing that one, they can be successful in both. And two, they kind of want to learn more about that person that they were hiding so carefully for so long to succeed in their career. Because the idea was that you can do one or another. And
Yeah.
COVID showed us that many people who are ambitious enough for their career, but also have family life, can do it both. And it's win-win basically. And I think that's where really the hunger again for that learning more. What can I do as a human on a personal level? How can I grow as a person while still remaining this professional stamina, professional strength in me, and professional ambition, really?
Yeah.
So,
I like that because you are right. I think that I mean when we talk about people in the corporate world, we have, John Smith, for example, right? There is his personality at home and then there's the personality at work, right? Sometimes people are very different in the workspace than they are in at home with their family and so on and so forth. So, I think that's interesting because maybe you feel and talk to us a little bit about that it's kind of shifting where they're able to take the pros and the cons from both and kind of allow it to leverage in their corporate environment in terms of really truly showing up 100% with their authentic self.
yeah, I think that's what happened. I mean, it has been shifting from the idea that how many videos did we see when kids running into the Zoom video, right? And when I was during COVID, I actually lived in New York and I worked in New York. So New York City, small apartments, people with kids. I mean, no meeting was actually happening end to end without somebody's kid, like either asking for something or being fed or being on somebody's shoulders. And that is, and we normalized it, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody said, oh my God, you're being so unprofessional.
Yeah.
We actually normalized it. A lot of people I hear, women especially, who say, you know what? I stopped wearing makeup because that became okay for me to show up on a camera in professional environment looking more authentic like me. Because why do I actually wake up and spend 30 or 40 minutes kind of, putting makeup on while I'm okay doing that? And that is really getting out of your comfort zone. That is getting out because for so many years, you were doing the same thing over and over again, right? And
Hmm.
this was a time when people broke those stereotypes for what professionalism means
Yes.
and what they can do and bring to it as humans. So again, like we just broke that separation between being a human and being professional.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Because for
almost like
too
we
long, yeah,
for too long. Go ahead.
yeah, no, for too long we were keeping them separately. We're saying
Yeah.
you keep your home at home, basically, right? Your life at home outside of your work, and then you go to work and you have to be this checklist.
Yes.
And then we can talk about, like authenticity in terms of minorities, in terms of again, like the same makeup, or how do we need to look, how do we need to show up, right? So, and in New York, it's in big corporations, they started implementing those casual Fridays. They started bringing a little bit more again of yes, we need to look professional. Yes,
Yeah.
corporate environment and professionalism matters. And at the same time, letting people feel a little bit more comfortable as they are doing work is going to only add to their desire to do better work because they want to stay there, right? So we don't leave jobs, we leave teams, we leave leadership, right? So,
Yeah.
and that is a really universal truth. Very few people who say even money does not come as high on the reason why people leave jobs as poor leadership.
Oh, for
If
sure.
people feel uncomfortable where they are, if people feel like they're not accepted for what they are, if people feel like they need to pretend over and over again, and again, before when it was normalized, people felt, well, that's what job means.
Yeah.
And then now we're saying, no, it doesn't have to be like that. You can actually be you. You can actually bring your personality and make that an asset to the team because your way of thinking is outside of the box, which can bring value. And now we start tapping into that rather than tapping into the kind of the check boxes, the stereotypes.
Yeah. No, I mean it's so true. It really is the factor of unlearning what corporate has taught us for so many years, and what corporate has not even just made us accept, but it's kind of demanded of us to be a certain way, which I think is what created this duality between who I am at home versus who I am at work, right? And especially in leadership positions, as I'm sure that you see, because sometimes, like, I have friends that I know in a corporate environment, I mean, they are iron fist to the T, but they go home and they are the softest, type of person that you will ever meet, right? They leave that persona at the office. So that's very interesting. I mean, this whole concept of unlearning. So talk to us a little bit.
And it's not only, just to kind of add there, Sasha, sorry, like it's
Yeah.
not only corporate, right? It's societal in general. Like we
Oh,
as
for
a
sure.
society used to have all those expectations from people. So, and I think that
Yeah.
that corporate is just part of it.
Corporate is one part of it. And if we really want to dig deep, we can talk about our cultural stuff that has been put on
Absolutely.
from our families, right? So there is this norm of, no matter where you come from, whether you come from Asia, whether you come from Eastern Europe, the Middle East, like the United States, there are these certain values that are instilled on you as a child that you grow up with, that may not necessarily be the values that you believe in, but you carry them throughout life, right? Which can create a lot of positive, but then it also can create a lot of like negative in terms of how somebody, you know, kind of rolls through life and deals with certain situations. So you are right. I mean, it's a portion, and it's a portion of a makeup of any human being, that we have all these societal pressures and norms that are like, this is how you should be, this is how you should be, where I think, to your point, that whole barrier and that whole wall is has and already is in flux to be broken down in so many ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your practice and how you approach, the different clients that come in through the door, and who your target audience is, and really kind of like the end-to-end spectrum of how you work with folks that you bring on.
Yeah. So I work with two different kind of ideal clients, right? One is individuals, and that can be individuals in leadership positions, individuals. I always talk about leadership, that it's not the position, it's really how we show up in life. So a mom, stay-at-home mom, is a leader, right? Because there's so many decisions that need to be made on a daily basis. So
Sure.
those are my individual clients. They really are people who have an ambition to break out of that hamster wheel of things, that want to get to want to understand what else is out there for them, right? What is
Yeah.
their potential? And we don't talk about potential, we talk about what else is out there for them, because a lot of times people think, this is what I've been doing for 5, 10, 20 years, I can't possibly be qualified to do anything else, because
Yeah.
this is what I've learned. And of course, the other part is my speaking business. And that's where I do a lot of workshops. And that's where mostly corporate leadership, where I work with youth, like young professionals, as well as, more seasoned professionals, mid-level professionals, helping them to navigate through their careers, through their leadership. And I do core energy coaching, which is really recognizing that we as humans show up everywhere with certain energy. We bring energy. We are energy, right? We bring energy to everywhere we show up. So, and how do we bring ourselves in the way that is beneficial for us, for our growth, and for people around us? So
Hmm.
that's where I developed my DREAM methodology, which stands for Discover, Reflect, Elevate, Energy, Act, and Maintain Momentum. And what I do there, and I do it with both clients just in different ways, what I do there is really, it's a holistic way of tapping into individual's core and recognizing whether all your needs and wants that you have now are actually yours. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times we just think they're ours because that's how we were taught to think. What does success mean? A lot of times success means, right, what we say, American dream, a
Hmm.
house, a kid, a family, right? So like there's a checklist of things. But if we think about it, how many different people are out there? And success can mean different for everyone. What if we
Oh
just
yeah.
allow ourselves to dream, not from what we were taught to dream, but what we want to dream? What if we connect with ourselves, right? So that's where discovery comes in. That's where really going in deeply into our core and then reflecting, because there's cost to everything. And that's why people, a lot of people even know what they want or their dreams, but they're like, okay, it costs me too much, right? So
Yeah.
what does it cost us not to actually go for them? And that's a question that we don't think about a lot, or don't we talk about a lot? Because yes, a lot of times, quitting your job, going into entrepreneurship, if that's what you want, or switching careers, or becoming a stay-at-home mom, those things come at a physical cost of a paycheck potentially. And that is a cost we think about. But what does it actually cost us when we don't go after that?
Yeah. I love that.
Right?
You're
Like
you
the
are you're
years
so
of
right.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also a question is, if you stayed where you are today, or if you continued on your path today, in 10 years,
Hmm.
how would it make you feel? And a lot of times this question is really what keeps people like, what almost like paralyzes people. People are like, oh, I don't want to be here in 10 years.
Years. Yeah.
But then if we don't change anything today, 10 years is going to be here in no time.
Yeah.
So that's really what reflection is, elevating energy. Then we start thinking from the future self, because then we know who we want to be. And then how do we want to show up, not as ourselves today, but as that person? There's a thing about sourcing energy from future almost, right? And it's really about we creating the persona we want to be. And now how do we show up? How do we live and breathe through that persona's lens? And that is where what we use to create an action plan. So we don't create action plans from where we are today. Because if we create action plans from where we are today, all the fears, all the limiting beliefs, that is what is making almost impossible for us, even those smart goals, right? We're thinking about it from like a tiny, tiny box kind of mindset. And but when we remove that box and we think, okay, I know that deep down this is who I am, and I'm willing to take the cost because the other cost is much higher. I'm willing to pay the price. So now, what am I going to do? What are the steps that I'm going to take? And we work for like baby steps. Like my whole approach is around tiniest steps possible and celebrating them. Because the moment we put a too big of a step in front of us, that's when people just, the energy goes down, the fears come back in. So just not to allow that happen. And maintaining momentum is a key thing, really. And it's funny because people are like, why is it a key thing? And I always say that maintaining momentum, if you put it on a scale, it literally almost, it's one thing against all four, because you can do
Everything.
entire process,
Yeah.
but if you don't pick up when you drop,
Yeah.
your drop is final, right? So it's really how, like the processes and the techniques, how do you actually ensure that every time you hit the wall, and we all hit the walls all the time, right? You just
Right.
recognize it's not a barrier. It's,
We keep
it's
moving.
just a temporary, yeah, exactly. Keep
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah. Momentum and
So
consistency, right? I mean, consistency to keep
absolutely,
moving. Yeah. I love
right.
that you say it's so true because I think, just knowing the friends that we know, or knowing, our colleagues when they're thinking about moving departments, interdepartmental, like, adjustments, or I really want to go out and do this, or making a huge career change where there's like an advancement into like education, to your point, or there is always going to be an investment in something. But I think when you weigh out, your time that you're never going to get back, right? If you stay stagnant, it's like, is that where you really want to be? Is that who you want to be? Is that where you want to continue to bring your family in life, right? Or do you want to make a shift? Do you want to make a change? What do you think is fear the biggest barrier? Is that what stops people? Is it finance? I mean, what are like maybe one or two or three things that you feel that are really stopping people from moving on? I mean, obviously once they've connected with you, they've made that decision, or maybe they're still on the brink, but is fear the biggest thing? What are others?
So fear is so big, right? So everything we think about and everything we can put in a bucket of fear. So in reality, if we fear of change, fear of not knowing what's going to happen, of uncertainty, right? So that is the fear that's truly keeping people stagnant. And there's a scientific explanation to that. Our brains are literally made to keep us alive.
Yeah.
So fear is a good thing. Fear is not a bad thing, right? Like we need fear. If we stand, at an edge of a no huge draw cliff. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I was just like, what is the edge? Yes, we're staying at the cliff. We want fear because we don't want to take that step forward, right?
Yeah.
So fear
Yeah.
is amazing and it's helpful. The question is whether that fear, what is that fear associated with, right?
Yeah.
And one of the best exercises that I do, it's a simple exercise, but it's so helpful, especially with young professionals, um, to recall moments in your past when you had to go through something new that was completely mind blowing. You were terrified of it. You had to take the step. You took that step and you succeeded, right? Or whatever the outcome was, you've learned something, right? That happened. So, what are the qualities in you that helped you get there?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we attribute success to situations, but it's not situations. It's us who persevered through some difficulties to be where we wanted to be.
Yeah.
And now, if we actually recognize that we have the power over any situation, and these are our assets, these are our strong sides, now we can apply them to any situation ahead. So it really removes that newness and uncertainty out of any situation because we know it's not a situation. We've done maybe this situation is with a job, the other situation was with a family. But the
Yeah.
situation is a situation. It's a new step that you had to take that you didn't know how to take. It's a baby that learns how to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
taking that first step is just as difficult as taking a new job or becoming a CEO. It's all the same thing. There is zero difference in how we approach not how we approach, but in the situation that comes into our life. But the difference is whether we approach it with open arms. And again, fear is okay. The question is, how do we now accept the fear and say, thank you? You are there to protect me, and I know how to get past it.
Yeah.
So, and that is really what the biggest thing, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of, the comfort zone. Like I'm okay here. A lot of my clients, they're like, I'm okay here. This,
Yeah.
this, 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 this perfect and this the most terrifying place of being okay. That's a place that keeps people stagnant.
But when you have clients that say, I'm okay here, but they've made a step to come to you, then they're not 100% okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you tackle that when how do you tackle moving them forward because it's like they're like, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to commit, we're going to go through this, but in actuality, like I don't, maybe it's like they don't know what they're looking for, or I mean, how describe that a little bit in terms of the personality, I guess.
Yeah. So it's, there are two different types of clients. There are clients who come to you and say, oh my God, everything is just horrible. And
Yeah.
those are the clients you need to move up the energy a little bit to show them that things are not that horrible before you go back and clean up the kind of the mess that they believe that their
Okay.
life is in.
Yeah.
And there is another type of client that comes and says, like, especially the corporate ones, right? Like, my boss wants me to go through this. I I'm okay. Like, I'm fine. And that is a client that you have to go back and show them that they're probably not fine because something is not working in their life or in their career. And that is why they were either recommended to come here or they're here themselves. And I just recently had this conversation and it made me think, I was on the phone talking to somebody, and I was sharing about my program, and the person was sitting and they're like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm seeing I'm losing her, right? So, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
asked her what's coming to her, what's coming to her mind, and she's like, you know what? I've been in personal development space for 4 years. I know it all.
Okay.
And yes, so and she's like, I've done it all. I know it all. Like basically, I get it. And I was like, okay. So the thing is that there's there's so much resources out there. There is so much information, and people think that getting information to their mind, that we know the definitions of things, is actually getting it. But she's sitting there telling me how she's so unhappy in her career, how she cannot get promoted, how she cannot progress into leadership. Like none of her goals are actually met, but she knows
Yeah,
theoretically everything. And the problem is that our brain says, you know what, you're good because you know all of this.
yeah.
But there's a huge gap between knowing and implementing,
True,
between knowing and living.
true.
And that was such an interesting conversation, because when I showed her that gap, because if you know it all, why are we talking?
Yeah. Well, we're never going to know
Because
it
I,
all, even as we
well, first of
continue
all,
to
we're never
grow in
going to know
life.
it all.
Yeah,
And it takes certain level of awareness to recognize that we're never going to know it all, because the
true.
more we actually know, the more we recognize how little we know. Because every time, and I always tell to, just like to my mentees usually, um, whenever you go to any conference or whenever you go to any course, if you decided to commit to something, go into it like you've never heard that before. Because if you go there with the idea that you know that, that's exactly what your brain is going to do. Done it, done it, done it. If you're there, there is a reason for that.
Yeah,
So you might get something out of it if you remove those filters. If you
yeah,
don't remove those filters, then unfortunately you're going to leave the conference saying it was complete waste of my time.
yeah, yeah. I
So
love
there's
that.
it's a yeah.
I love that because, I mean, I myself have been on this journey of like, self improvement since 2013, whether it's been meditation or things for like corporate or so on and so forth. But even when you hear the same thing, you hear it from a different person's mouth. So you hear it in a different way, which may also flip a bulb in your mind that may have not been flipped if you heard it from X, right? So I think it's to your point, yes, you've heard it before, but oh, okay, now I'm hearing it from somebody else. And it's all kind of coming together and converging down, a certain like path, right? And it should be giving you the kind of check mark of like, I'm either on the right path or maybe I've heard it too many times. It doesn't feel like it's the right path for me. But yes, to your point, you have to be self aware to kind of make that interpretation of like what you're going through or what you're hearing in that sense.
Absolutely. And more so, right? Every time we hear information, not only we hear it from a different source, which is absolutely true because we connect with different people, we connect with different energies, but we also are a different person. So you and I leaving this conversation today are not going to be the same people who came into this conversation.
True.
Every piece of information you get, every minute you get, right? We are changing. And you receive the same information that you receive from me today, tomorrow it might land differently because you've grown or you've changed from place to place. You've learned something, right? So every step, every moment that we live, we change. There
Yeah.
is not a minute that we're the same person. So, and when we receive, if we're interested, to your point, right? If that's something that we know it's not aligned with us, we shouldn't be forcing ourselves, and that's for sure. But if that's something we're interested in and we keep going back to it, and we are 5 years into self development and haven't reached results, that is because we blocked ourselves from reaching results. Because
Yes.
we said that somehow none of this is working for me. So that's when self convincing and self sabotaging comes in, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I decided that none of this is going to work for me. So I'm going to listen to it just to prove myself that it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
And yeah.
Tell me, are there different types of or have you coined the different types of energy archetypes in terms of, how you were talking about these two clients, like one is over here and I need to bring them back down, or one is down and I need to bring them back up. What are your interpretations of like energy archetypes? Maybe that's not the right word, but how do you coin them in terms of how you, I mean, I don't like to say categorize because nobody wants to be put in a box, right? But it's like, how do you differentiate each person from the other?
It's actually a very interesting question because I am certified. My entire certification, my entire coaching is based on Bruce Schneider's 7 levels of energy.
Yeah.
So, and it does have those 7 levels. But to your point, what I do, there's also oh my goodness, an assignment.
Yeah.
Yes. So, anyways, so there's also a way to assessment. That was the word that I was looking for. Totally escaped me. But anyway, there's also an assessment that helps us define where we spend most of our time with, because energy fluctuates. We cannot remove energy. We cannot add on energy. What we can do, we can transform energy from one to another. What do we do with energy? And the most important thing is that there is no good or bad energy. The moment we start thinking in good or bad, like in those dualities, that's when we actually lose touch with energy, right? Because
Yeah.
the force of good energy is the same force as force of bad energy. It's energy. So what do
Yeah.
we do with it? What intention we put into it? That is where the difference is. So the 7 levels of energy concept is, it goes from the level of energy which called victim. So victim is a person who is at receiving end of everything that is happening in life. And my best example is always with politics, just to say, if only the political situation changed, and I think that many of us probably know, right? Like my life would have been different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that is really like, and but then we can apply it. If only my boss changed, my life would have been different. If only I had a different spouse who helped me more, I would have. If only my child wouldn't be screaming 24/7, I would be different. Like you can, but the point is that it's so passive that we put full responsibility on the other person, and we don't really do anything with it to change it. So we sit there very grumpy, very negative. We like hide because we just don't know what to do. And it goes and it moves up the energy levels through the fighter. Then we say, okay, I'll take responsibility, but I'm going to fight for everything. So that's a
Yeah.
person who really, and that's our corporate America pre COVID, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's sometime before pre-COVID, but like if we put COVID as a, so
Mhm.
and many people are still like that old mindset of, there's no free lunch. It's all about a pie, right? Like who gets a bigger piece of the pie? All that mindset, right? So like people are incapable, right, or incompetent. I have to do all myself, like all those things, and that's like, and yeah, you can be successful at that. Are you happy? Not really sure about it. So that's a
Yeah.
different thing, right? And then we get to that place where we're like, I'm okay. I'm okay. At least I have a job. I'm okay. At
Yeah.
least I have this. I'm okay. So that is the energy level that can keep you. It's like, I always call it like Instagram energy level, because like on the picture it looks beautiful. You're like, I'm perfect. I have this awesome job, and then it kind of crappy from the inside, but nobody needs to
Hmm.
know about it. I'm okay. That kind of thing. And then
The
we move
Instagram
up to the
versus
place.
reality thing, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But the thing is, a lot of people in level 3 actually don't recognize the reality,
Yeah.
because
That's scary.
they are so, it's like this affirmations, right? Like, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. You can say I'm happy so many times, but if you feel miserable inside,
Yeah.
nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
Right? So it's all about like, how do you feel energetically? And then goes up from there into place where we want to share, we recognize we're part of the whole, we want to collaborate, there's a win-win, there is actually creation, because we recognize that by having more, we're not taking away from anyone, we're actually contributing more. So more
Mhm.
people can have more, right? And that's what you do by, for example, like this podcast, right? You actually, you are taking a market share of like having the podcast, but you also bringing in more information to people, and you bring in more insights to people, so more people get inspired to have the podcast, right? So there's a very different energy. that we can grow with. And there's energy, of course, when we say of when we kind of disconnect with our physical beings and fully remain in that, in that like meditative state. But those also serve, we cannot live in them, but if we can tap into them, we can create space in our minds and our heads for new ideas, for new inspirations. So that's really how the energy works. But again, like through the assessment, you can recognize where you are, what's a combination of energies that you host within yourself or you live in most of the time. And we can set goals. Like with clients, they set goals where they want to be, and we take assessment in a year again and see how they shifted. And that's actually pretty fascinating.
Wow, that's interesting. But you can have people that sit in between different types of energy flows, right? Okay. Yeah, because
Correct.
it's like you're okay.
Yes.
hmm
Yeah,
So
so
it's
it's
either you're
never
just
it's
within.
never one place. It's you're a combination of all. It just you have
Yes.
more of one energy, more of the other
Than the other.
energy, and the shift is happening from there. But again, all
Wow.
energy levels serve you. Like that's another key thing because I said that there's no good or bad. The level one that I described, we
Yes.
need level one sometimes. We need to hide sometimes. We need the ability to grieve sometimes. We need the ability to be like at that self pity. The question is, can you get out of it fast enough?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So,
So it's
because
this
if we
ebb and
don't
flow
leave ourselves
between.
space for that,
Yeah.
exactly, we need to be able to say we're humans and that's
Yeah.
okay to crush. And it's okay to feel bad for yourself. The
Yeah.
point is not to get stuck in there.
Stuck. That's the key
And I think
word there.
that's where
Stuck.
the yeah, exactly. And that's where like positive, this whole positive psychology is a little bit becoming too toxic in my mind because people just say, I shouldn't be this, I cannot be this. And they try too hard
That's
to
stressful.
really ignore. Exactly.
Yeah.
They add on more stress by
Yeah.
just pretending or thinking that they should be something, where
Yeah.
in reality, they should be themselves. They should feel all the emotions. And
Yeah.
that's okay to feel sad.
Yeah. I like that. It's it's feeling where you are at that given time, and it's okay to be where you are. I mean, it's the whole concept of like, even for like entrepreneurs or everything that we're doing in our life, right? I mean, it's the idea of like, it's okay if one thing doesn't work out, you learn from it, you know how to switch it, and then you move on. But it's, and a lot of I think companies are great that celebrate failures, because you take from the failure to improve on whatever else you're going to be building from there. um, what has been one of the most profound things in terms of either a working with somebody, or just a pivoting moment in the work that you do, that really kind of ignited a shift, I guess, in continuing the process? Or yeah, I mean, what has been the biggest breakthrough in all the work that you've been doing, whether it was with a client or whether it was something that you discovered, or where you're like, this is it.
Hmm, that's a really good question. There's so many, and like nothing just stands out that much. So let me just think about it. The personal breakthrough is probably, yeah, I think the personal breakthrough was to really recognize that nothing is permanent.
Yeah.
And remember how I talked about like mentally, we might know the concept, and conceptually, I've been aware of that for a really long time. But when I jumped onto this entrepreneurship journey, that is when I realized that I can try things and they might or might not work. And if I get stuck on continuing kind of walking that path just because I committed to it in the beginning, it just might not be the right thing for me. Right.
Yeah.
So, and recognizing that it's okay to change, it's okay to switch. That's where presence plays a little bit of the role too, to say, you know what, I'm going to do this for now just to
Yeah.
see where it takes me.
Yeah.
And what it does, and actually it does with my clients too, it takes that pressure of commitment, that pressure of I have to make it work forever, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is like, it's a life changing, it's like one step that will change your life. If you remove that and if you say, I'm just going to try it, I'm going
Yeah.
to try it, If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. What am I going to learn from it? And whether I'm going to apply learning to the same path or I'm going to pivot, that is going to be the decision I'm going to make tomorrow. But
Yeah.
today, this is my goal and this is what I'm going to do. And I think that really recognizing that I don't know where my journey is going to take me, right? So I'm here right now. I wasn't thinking about speaking business when I started coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm loving the workshops and loving the speaking, because that actually, that ability to open doors for more people into personal development, into professional development, that just, I did it once and it just ignited a fire in me, and I was like, this
Yeah.
is what I want to do. So, and I
Yeah.
started doing that, right? So, and who knows where I'm going to be in a year. I
Yeah.
think that's
Well,
what it is.
I love
It's
that
that
because it's
lightness.
the, yeah, it's the lightness, and it's also your ability to touch so much more, right? And to touch so many more people, because I mean, let's face it, like as a coach or any type of service that you offer, and as an individual, there's only so many people that you can take on because you don't want to burn out, right? But if you can do these workshops, and if you can make that small change in somebody's mind in that given workshop, then you've done your job, then you've succeeded, because you've made a shift in somebody to kind of move in a different direction, right? And it was just maybe that one thing that you said in that talk or in that workshop, when you're amongst, like, a couple of hundred people, and you've converted somebody from moving from one shift of energy to another, then that's it. That's a successful, like, endeavor, right?
Absolutely. I always say that one thing is to kind of have the desire or ambition to change somebody's life, but honestly, and that was me a couple of when I started on the coaching journey, but now I just really want to give people that like peek into the other side, right? Like that there's
Yeah.
so much more potential, and then they can take it wherever they want to, right? They can
Yeah.
find a coach, a person, a voice that resonates with them. So we there's so again, we don't lack resources at this point in that industry, right? What we lack is resources that reach people enough for them to actually want to make the change, not to actually just read it, but
Yeah.
to apply it and implement it. And if I can just shift that and take a person from being just a consumer of information to say, hey, I want to learn more about it and I want to take that step, this is success.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Kamilla, this has been amazing, but what I want to leave the audience with is what is something that they can do to think about making that shift, or what are the questions they can ask themselves today to consider where they are within that energy sphere or that gap, to say, okay, this is a move that I need to make.
Hmm. So one thing that comes to mind in an exercise that I do a lot in workshops is, and it's part of discovery process as well. A lot of people struggle with figuring out what they want,
Yeah.
because when they think about what they want, a lot of things, again, a lot of noise comes in. But what if somebody said, okay, forget about what you want for a second and just list things that you, and yes, that you do not want to have in your life and your career. You definitely know 100% you do not want those things. Create a list of 30. And then when you have that list of 30, now put an opposite statement, one or two statements next to it of what you, again, don't put it as you what you want, just literally the opposite statement. And when you read through those 30 or 60 opposite statements, from 30 to 60, it's going to give you a really good idea of where your heart is.
Yeah.
Because when we start thinking about what we want, our limitations, our fears come in and they filter the messaging for us.
Yeah.
They reshape the messaging. But if we go from what we definitely don't want and we put it the other way around, we don't have control over it, right? So it's basically just words, it's just common sense, it's mind, right? So, and that exercise, that analytical exercise, can be like at a core of our energetic being.
Yeah.
And from there, really thinking, maybe asking, what is the next step, right? Like, what is one tiniest step, like the tiniest step that I can do, that I can commit to doing, that will take me one step closer to that place.
Wow, I
So
love
if
that.
you
I
start
love that.
there, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
that's
shift.
profound. That really is a good takeaway. So where can everybody find you, Kamilla?
A lot of places. Instagram for sure. So I am, my company is You Dream You Do. So it's super easy. So You Dream You Do, at You Dream You Do, Instagram, LinkedIn, Kamilla Pinel, just my name. My website, youdreamyoudo.com, as well as youdreamyoudo/speaking. So, and an email. I'm happy to share my email with you after the show. And yeah,
I can
happy
link.
for it to be
Yeah.
shared. Just reach out with any questions about the episode, about anything we spoke about. I'm just happy to chat with anyone.
I love it. Thank you so much for all that you do, Camilla. I think it's definitely needed, and it's really great to see you keeping pushing forward and all of that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Sasha. It was a wonderful conversation.
Likewise.